Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, and it's a great day to have on a very special guest to break down some bold calls and players that we just cannot simply leave drafts without. The one, the only. We got Jake Ciely, the all-in kid, president and founding father of the Band Kickers movement, senior fantasy writer at The Athletic. Make sure you guys subscribe to Jake's pod over at All In Speedrun. Jake, what's up, man?
Yeah, I actually thought you were going to say president of the fan club of Darius Slayton. I thought that's what you're going to be leading off with.
I left that one for the tweet over there, so that'll be a nice little surprise for you. But yeah, we have both actually been talking a lot to the great Pat Mayo. Make sure you guys check out those episodes as well. It was fun being, actually in the seat where we got to make fun of Pat this week, Jay, because usually he just kind of picks and prods at our rankings. The turns tables this week, if you will.
Yeah, how the turntables have turned. Yeah, it was a good time to be able to go back and forth with him. Interesting that we'll have a conversation next week. Kind of like, I think it's a good one that he has. I know we're talking this show today, but that the takes that we have that just kind of don't make sense. Like, it's just our feelings, our gut feelings, because that's part of the reason we do this, though, is like we can do all the same analysis that everybody else does, but we watch football and have feelings about some stuff that just isn't backed by numbers.
And again, really getting into those draft rooms. One of yours actually last night, the Flex League of Experts, if you will, was a fun one to get in there. Dwayne McFarland, Kendall Valenzuela in the same squad as well. And then Dwayne and I also got a real-time sports in draft that should be live Saturday morning. Appreciate you guys always paying attention to those. But Jake, it is one of those things where, again, we have our rankings. And I know like me, man, like you have to do these things in February. They want these way too early ones off there. So it's one thing to kind of be setting up that Excel using your quote-unquote model. It's another thing to actively be there on the clock, man. I feel like there's a lot of revelations that come simply from getting these drafts in.
Yeah, so two things with that is, we do have projections. You guys have projections, all the types of same things. But my ranks, just like you guys, won't match 100% with the projections because there's upside, there's risk, there's situations where, my bench is going to have more potential than, just the starters of having a floor. And then on top of it, like you said, is sometimes once you get in that draft room, you kind of almost question your own rankings where you're kind of like, hey, I'm on the clock, but hey, would I really take this player over this one when it's like my decision to make? And I think that's the big conversation you and I have had with Pat, and the kind of conversations we have in general is just, what are we going to do? Like, I'll give you a comparison. You brought up the Flex League. Last night, all four drafts, you were the fourth draft to have had this happen. Saquon Barkley was the second or third running back off the board. The entire industry is talking about, 400 touches. I don't know if I want him there. I'm going to have to take him at the end of the first round. And yet all four drafts, he went as the second or third running back off the board, which tells us, yeah, people can talk about it all the time, but when the money, money in your mouth, whatever, put your money where your mouth is, Barkley comes off the board as a top 3 running back.
Absolutely, man. And again, it's the same thing, man. You're on there at 103. You can talk about it, but can you actually walk that walk? Again, that's what drafts love to reveal in us. So in the spirit of all that, guys, we're getting Jake's 3 must-draft players this year, also some bold calls and even some home league back and forth. All that on the way here on the Fantasy Life Show. First, though, as always, it's time for our DraftKings opening lines. Jake, I want to take a moment to talk about someone that I'm sure we both have obviously talked about plenty this offseason already, but just as we get closer to week one, okay, there's a certain amount of players where I haven't been making the biggest habit of drafting them throughout the summer, and it keeps me awake at night, man. It actually downright terrifies me, and specifically one of them, Mr. Brock Bowers, balling out at Raiders practice, killing the 49ers out there. Yeah, whatever. But man, we are talking about the guy who just had the second best rookie season ever in PPR points per game. Shout out Mike Ditka, still holding that record, even if he doesn't have the receiving yards out here. I mean, he did this catching passes from Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. And yes, that price is high. We're talking about 19th overall on ESPN and Yahoo, 16th overall in Sleeper. But man, Jake, I just worry again that I could be looking up in week 3 going, oh yeah, Brock Bowers just got a quarterback upgrade. He's one of the best tight end prospects in recent memory. What are we doing here? Why was I overthinking this? So Jake, my question for you is, how early is too early to draft Brock Bowers in your home league?
Basically, anytime before the 2-3 turn, in my opinion. Even then, I'm hesitant on it, but it's for a multitude of reasons. So you bring up last year, and you and I have had this conversation on other shows and stuff like this, but George Kittle actually outperformed on the points per game. But that's the 2-part reason there is, one, I'm happy to get George Kittle 2 rounds later, who I think could be neck and neck with him. But 2, George Kittle's points per game last year still was only wide receiver 15 to 17, depending on your scoring format, to bring up the Travis Kelce years. The reason we took Travis Kelce at the end of the first round for those years is because he was performing as a top 10 wide receiver. So you really have to get to that 15, 17, 18 points per game to really make that happen. And can it for Bowers? Sure, but will it? I wouldn't bet on it. I'm sure you've seen the same numbers I have. He actually had a better catchable pass percentage than most people want to give credit for those quarterback situation that he was dealing with. It's going to be so much better with Geno. It wasn't awful. Of course, it's an improvement, but it just wasn't awful last year. So to ask him to give us a 4-point per game jump going into year 2, I just think is a little extreme. So if you want to take him at the 2-3 turn, I'm okay with it, but I'd rather do the same thing you've been doing, and we're going to continue to do, is just wait 2 more rounds and get George Kittle.
And hey, I've learned the hard way over the years that just because you have some arbitrage versions of players cheaper and available later in the drafts doesn't necessarily mean the more expensive version is a bad investment. Okay. I love getting cheap golf clubs, but hey, if someone's going to give me, the expensive fancy driver, I will take that 8 days of the week. If you guys got any, let me know, guys. I Hartitz on Twitter. But look, Jake, I'm looking at the Fantasy Life rankings right now. Everyone else, man, like this is what scares me, has Brock Bowers being the 15th or 18th ranked player overall. I'm at 25. Okay. I'm with you. That is right there on the round 2-3 turn. Kittle, McBride later. Yes, that's fine. I'm with you there. I'm cool with Bowers, though, ahead of them. Like, that's not outrageous to me by any stretch of the imagination, but we still have those top 12 running backs and top 12 wide receivers. That really is the thing. So, yeah, if I'm deciding between Devontae Adams and Marvin Harrison Jr., I'll just take the elite tight end. And even once we start getting to that James Cook, even maybe Kenneth Walker, RBs of the world, okay, give me the tight end there as well. But again, man, just you brought the number about him as a wide receiver. If you just look at flexes, okay, you include running backs last year as well. Brock Bowers, as great as he was, man, would have been the flex 33. So again, it's a situation where he does need to improve quite a bit. And who's to say this offense is going to be leaning quite a bit on new RB1 Ashton Genty as well?
Yeah, that's a big question there too, is that, is the target distribution going to be the same? We can assume that it is. We can assume that he's going to be the same option. But what if it's a little bit more run balance, question marks across there? Does their defense a little bit better? There's just a lot, again, which doesn't come back to the fact of hating on Brock Bowers. It's not the fact that we don't like him. As you said, I am at 24. Apparently, I love him so much more than you do, having one spot in front of you. But he is my number 1 tight end. Trey McBride is right behind him. George Kittle is right on their heels. And it's not a bad pick. It's just the leading question that you have is what's too early. And I think when you take him to the mid upper second round, you're pushing that Travis Kelce territory. You're pushing that territory where he does have to be, as you brought up, flex top 15, because that's around where he's going. It's like even 18. He needs to get into that range, which is in the world of outcomes. But if you told me out of 10 times, how many times does that happen? I'd be more on like maybe the 3 out of 10 times that happens. And for that case, he's just not in the Travis Kelce conversation, Gronkowski conversation. He's kind of more in, honestly, what George Kittle was doing in some of his best years, which always fell behind Travis Kelce, which was always frustrating for Kittle. But that being said, it's just a tough hill to climb to get there because of what you sacrifice. And that, that's what happened. I took him. I actually ended up with the 1-2 in an industry league. And I said, you know what? I'll try it at 211. And I didn't hate my roster, but it just leaves you with a void where I was playing catch up with wide receiver because my first pick was Bijan Robinson. So that's part of it too, is you're going to be playing catch up somewhere.
And I actually do like the 101 or 102 start, but usually I'm not taking the tight end there. Okay. I'm getting the Chase Brown or Bucky Irving kind of round 2, 3. You see Drake London, AJ Brown, even sometimes depending on your site. Of course, starting things off with Chase, Bijan, or CeeDee Lamb feels pretty good there. So again, good to get off there. Hey, you guys do have Brock Bowers in that tight end 1 spot. You're going to be feeling pretty dang good about it as soon as week 1 comes along. Someone who I have on, I believe, 2 of my 4 dynasty teams. So again, Jake and I not hating the player, maybe just a little bit that ADP. These have been our DraftKings opening lines. Football fans, the countdown is on and the road to kickoff starts now. From bowl predictions to preseason hype, this is the perfect time to lock in your picks and join the action. Accordingly, I partnered with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you a killer offer. Place a $10 NFL futures bet and get a Survivor Pool ticket automatically. Back your squad and take a shot at the $1 million plus top prize. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And yeah, guys, Survivor Pools really are simple. You pick one NFL team to win each week, survive in advance. But here's the twist. You cannot pick the same team twice. Strategy counts. Think you can outlast the field? Well, if you want to make your picks even more exciting, you can use your bet to explore same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Stack multiple bets from one matchup for max drama. And hey, if sports betting isn't yet live in your state, don't worry. No sweat. You can still play DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports for a chance to win real cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. Place a $10 NFL futures bet and claim your ticket to the Survivor Pool today. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Jake, I'm sure you're in plenty of drafts this offseason. And while we can't always get our guys, weird things are going to happen. We're going to get sniped. It'd be a lot cooler if we could every single time out there. So I wanted to break down 3 players who you are actively trying to draft more times than not. Starting off with someone who, if you just basically only listen to social media, apparently is the only man having a bad training camp. Talk about Jets quarterback Justin Fields, Jake, and why you do not want to leave drafts without him.
Yeah, I know. He's the worst quarterback ever this preseason. What's going on here? Forget about it. Justin Fields, look, we can reference the 2022 or 23 season where you played 15 games. He was QB6 or QB5, depending on your league. There was a slight difference in 4-point or 6-point per passing touchdowns. But he was QB5 or 6 in points per game and for the season, despite only playing 15 games. And what it comes down to is the rushing upside. You know what the funny thing is? We're joking about the preseason, but let me put it in different terms. I don't even need him to be a good passer. I don't care. I don't care if he's middle of the pack because he's going to run for potentially 1,000 yards or more. I would say the floor, if he plays 16 out of 17 games, would be 800 yards, and then the rushing touchdowns to boot. So he throws for 2,500 yards and 18 touchdowns, which is a pretty miserable season by quarterback standards in the NFL. He's going to be a top 10 quarterback. And that's why I can't leave drafts without him, because people are still reading the preseason. People are still worried about Justin Fields losing his job, which I don't believe is happening because they didn't sign him to be like, well, it's not working 4 games and let's turn back to Tyrod Taylor. No, the only chance that Fields has of not being the quarterback is if he gets hurt. And I understand the risk, but the good news is he's barely going as a top 10 quarterback in some drafts. He's not even side there in ADP on a lot of sites. So Justin Fields to get as a mid-late round pick as my QB1, no problem whatsoever. Because again, I go back to actually, you know what? I'll even take it one step further. Let's say he's a mediocre passer and throws almost 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. He has a chance to be a top 3 quarterback, and that's the upside with Fields.
And again, you just don't see quarterbacks that run this much bust, even on a per game basis, okay? Because you can do the whole, these guys played 16 games. They all end up finishing as top 12, whatever. But man, since 2014, quarterbacks with at least 100 rush attempts have finished top 12 in 28 of 31 instances. Really should even be 29. Lamar Jackson's numbers were a little bit screwy while being a wildcat guy for Joe Flacco early on in 2018. But Jake, I know our fantasy life projections have Fields going for, I think, 140 rush attempts only behind Jalen Hurts. I know you have your projections over at The Athletic, and very cool feature that you guys have is that you actually give people the ability to adjust those. So if they disagree with yours, then yeah, go ahead and do what you want. But I imagine Justin Fields, again, with good health permitting, but at the same time, man, I've always thought about that. That is weird where it's like, oh, someone scrambling, someone athletic enough to evade the rush is inherently more injury prone than some pocket passer who can't actually get out of the way of these guys. We have seen research that actually does suggest that's a bunch of BS. But Jake, I'm guessing Justin Fields well north of 100 rush attempts for you this year.
And not even well north. So the funny thing is two parts. I love that you brought that up because FB Injury Doc did a study on that a few years ago and proved that rushing, put that in quotes, rushing quarterbacks don't get hurt more frequently than pocket passers because pocket passers get hit when they get folded up by a defensive end or whatever might happen there. Unless you're Anthony Richardson and you don't know how to avoid contact, he's the only one that I put like in his own bucket of like, stop getting hurt, dude. But I actually played it conservatively. I gave him 16 out of 17 games just to play a little bit injury. And it was mostly because, we go back to the conversation you and I were having about projections. It's like I tried to play the more conservative approach with Fields just to make sure I wasn't too crazy. And so I gave him 16 games. I have him 110 rush attempts. I feel like that's the floor if he plays 16 games. And that's kind of what I wanted to go with. With your projections even being higher, and you say 120, 130, I think is more within the wheelhouse. My only concern would be how much do they want to try and not limit him, but just say we have 3 running backs we've been talking of this entire preseason. Let's just maybe keep him in check, so to speak. But even so, I still have him way north, as you were saying there, way north of 700 yards. I have him for 6 rushing touchdowns. And those 2 numbers alone, you know where I'm about to go with this, Ian. I bring up Daniel Jones all the time. 700 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns that season. He didn't even throw a touchdown per game and finished as a top 10 quarterback. And that's Daniel Jones, not even Justin Fields.
And again, you don't have to go out of your way for Fields and a lot of these home league guys. We're talking about picks 124 and 128 overall over on ESPN and Sleeper, okay? Again, use our Fantasy Life ADP tool presented by the fine folks at Premier National Sports. He goes 81 on Yahoo, 91 on FFPC. Those are a little bit steeper prices. We might still have some running backs, wide receivers, maybe a top 6 tight end that we're more interested in at that spot. But man, outside the top 120 picks in this economy, Jake, sign me up for Justin Fields every time over there. Let's talk about running back, someone who I was very, very happy to snipe away from Mr. Dwayne McFarland yesterday. I actually got an immediate response from Dwayne that I am not allowed to read out loud because of language restrictions we have on this program. But Jake, let's talk about Patriots RB1, 2, we'll see. Trayvon Henderson, someone who at this point, man, I've moved up to RB16. I'm a believer, and I just think that, again, when you look at players that we're trying to target, we want guys who can rip off big plays, make the most out of limited opportunities, and running backs who can catch passes. Sure seems like Henderson has a sort of archetype we should actively be following.
100%. Now I feel bad because you actually have him ranked in front of me. I have him inside my top 20, but you're a little bit more aggressive, but I have no problem with that. It's funny that you said, is he the number 1 or is he number 2? I'm going to go to something where I don't really care if he's splitting in this backfield. I do believe he's the 1. I just don't care that he's splitting because I've brought this up before, is that James White over the last 10 seasons is the only running back to finish as a top 12 running back in PPR without having 210 touches. That's pretty stark to think, not even 210 touches and he was RB1. James White in the offense with, oh, by the way, Josh McDaniels running the helm of the offense. And I know we don't have Tom Brady at quarterback, but that's why I don't have Trayvon Henderson as RB12. I just have him, oh, by the way, the pass catcher in this backfield with Drake May, who's already dumping things off, which still has major questions up and down that wide receiver board. Kyle Williams looks like he's not going to be a factor for a while as a rookie. Stephon Diggs was just getting interviewed by Daniel Rossini, my colleague over here at The Athletic, and he was like, I try to be aggressive, but we don't feel great. I'm paraphrasing. He said that about the team and himself, things don't feel great right now. That doesn't feel like Diggs is going to be 100% or even potentially ready for week 1. And then you go down the list and Demario Douglas is cool, but there's going to be the passing game out of the backfield for Trayvon Henderson. If he steps into a potential Alvin Kamara volume of 90-plus targets, 70-plus receptions, 250 touches? Even if let's bring him back. Let's bring him back to 210 touches. He will be a top 10, top 20 running back. His top 10 might be a little bit aggressive. I'll say top 20 definitively. But if he got to 250, I would say he's top 10.
And it's just a matter of similar to what we were talking about with the dual threat quarterbacks. Like the two things that really I do think, especially in full PPR, wind up being cheat codes for us are the high volume rushing QBs and the high volume receiving running backs. And that is what we're expecting to get here with Trayvon. That's even before considering the fact that this dude could average 5, God forbid, even 6 yards per carry, just with his big play, one hitter quitter ability. So I actually want to put a poll up on Twitter earlier today, Jake. We're going to pull it up right now. Who would you rather have on your fantasy team this season in full PPR scoring? We got north of 3,000 votes already. 48% Trayvon Henderson, Breece Hall 24%, Chuba 19%, RJ Harvey just 8%. So again, I picked those names because just based on ADP right now, those guys, especially Chuba and Breece, are pretty much consensusly going ahead of Trayvon. Jake, we were talking before about, again, being on the clock and how that can change things. I'm not going to lie. When I looked at Breece Hall versus Trayvon Henderson, I had Breece ranked higher at first. Guess what? I don't anymore.
Because you're on the clock and you can say, hey, I'm going to take Henderson. The Breece Hall thing was pretty damning through the first. Yeah, the first game. Look, we've heard the talk, and I'm glad you bring up the Breece Hall thing because to go back to the Justin Fields conversation, there's a conversation to be had with Fields, the chicken or the egg. Like, he didn't have great running backs. Is that part of it, or is this just what Fields in this offense might be? But the one telling part when I went back and looked at Justin Fields and the running backs that were alongside of him, I don't think anybody was the talent of Breece Hall. But the one telling part of the usage for those teams, it was they used their bigger option when they got into the green zone inside the 10-yard line. Well, if you're looking at this backfield, and we've already heard them talking up Braylon Allen, who's the bigger option? Who's the better thumper? It's Braylon Allen. So my concern is that Breece Hall might even fall into that old Matt Forte where he's the guy between the 20s, and then all of a sudden he's not even on the field for potential touchdowns, and you take those away. I'm with you. Like, I have Breece Hall one spot on Trayvon Henderson, and I might think long and hard that I might have to do what you said. I'm on the clock, and I might just say, you know what? I'm going for the upside of Trayvon Henderson.
And again, I don't think the Patriots and the Jets, to be fair, like, we're not expecting an abundance of, rush attempts inside the 5-yard line in the first place, but there could also be a third party involved in New York. I'm not trying to be the boy who cried, first team preseason snap rates over here, but we were getting a bit more Isaiah Davis than expected, over there. So again, just a situation where in the year 2025, all these backfields have multiple backs involved. We can live with 2, 3 or more, and fantasy does start to become a bit of a problem. So good stuff there. Jake, I did want to quickly show, because Dwayne and I were in these real-time sports streets last night, and man, I thought we were so ready to draft Trayvon Henderson at the round 3-4 turn, man. Didn't even get a chance. This dude went in the middle of round 3, man. Basically, it was a situation where he went right after Josh Allen. As you guys can see, he's up there in the middle of round 3. Lab McConkey, Alvin Kamara, T. Higgins went after him. I mean, that's a little steep for me. Okay, I wouldn't take Kamara over him, but James Cook, T. Higgins, Lab McConkey probably would have pulled the trigger there. But hey, man, I'm seeing, like, right now, I think on Yahoo, Trayvon's this, round 7 pick and everything. But more and more, based on what I'm seeing in these quote unquote higher stakes streets here, Trayvon, he's someone that you might want to take, around ahead of ADP, because a lot of people like this dude.
Yeah, so I'm glad you bring that up, because you can take him ahead of ADP in your home leagues and everything like that. And that's not talking down to those leagues. This is the high stakes where, people are chasing for it. It's first or last. It's Ricky Bobby. You don't necessarily need to do the same in your home league like that. But the Trayvon Henderson there, like, that's starting to get a little bit pricey for me to see, especially in front of James Cook with this new deal. Like, we were all concerned about James Cook. I mean, James Cook, even if he had half the touchdowns he had last year, is still a pretty good bet to finish as a fringe RB1. So I don't know if I would go that far, but the bigger part you bring up here is you can still get him ahead of ADP without having to go crazy. I think that's the biggest point that I know you weren't asking this, but your rankings, my rankings, Dwayne's, everybody's. Sometimes when I'll bring up a wide receiver that we're going to probably not even talk about today, but like, if you look down my rankings, actually as a sneak preview for earlier, Jaden Higgins, we are going to talk about him, but you see how far ahead he is in ADP for my rankings. That doesn't mean you have to take him there. Like, when you see plus 36, that doesn't mean, okay, I got to go get him 3 rounds beforehand. That just tells you, like, there's an aggressive spot to be taken here, and you can just still get him 1 to 2 rounds earlier. So don't get hung up. If we're sitting here talking up Trayvon Henderson, you don't have to do the same thing and take him in the 3rd round.
And that is the tricky things with ranking versus ADP, trying to set you guys up. I've taken more of an approach this year, Jake, where I'm just ranking the guys where I have them. And I'm kind of relying on you guys using them to be like, okay, you know your league mates, you know the ADP, you know the site. Try your best to adjust those on the fly. Because, we were on the Pat Mayo show and Pat asked me why I had someone ranked there. And I was like, well, because of ADP. And just as soon as I started a sentence like that, I was like, shut up, you freaking idiots. So again, always trying to fine tune these rankings, but just something to keep in mind that, know your ADP, know your site, know your enemies. So, Jake, last guy that, again, you just absolutely want to be leaving drafts with is a favorite of mine here, Titans wide receiver Calvin Ridley. He's my wide receiver 23, and I am pretty easily the highest on him of any fantasy life rankers. So, yeah, sure, Cam Ward, not exactly proven at this point in time, but you'd like to think he's going to be better than the sad sacks who were throwing Ridley the ball last year. We are talking about a sky-high target ceiling here.
We are. And you know what the crazy thing to think about? He's yet to catch 100 balls in his career, which is just crazy to think about for Calvin Ridley. Peak at 90, and that was on under 140 plus targets, which I bring that up to say, even if it was the 90, the 140 plus targets feels like he's walking into that this year. We talk about Garrett Wilson with Justin Fields for people that want to argue for Garrett Wilson. We talk about this target volume for all these wide receivers as the ones. And yet it doesn't seem like anybody wants to give Calvin Ridley that kind of upside, which you just bring it up. I'll get to Cam Ward in a second. But let's just talk about last year. 120 targets for Calvin Ridley, finished as a top 30 wide receiver with, you want to talk about junk throwing to him. It was junk and miserable. I mean, we spent half the season making memes out of the quarterback situation there with Will Levis. So 120 targets. He had 4 red zone and 1 end zone target the entire year. That is insane for somebody like Calvin Ridley. And then you bring in Cam Ward, which Cam Ward is just not a massive boost at the quarterback position. He's also a terrific deep ball guy who we've already seen in the preseason game and preseason practices is chucking it downfield and connecting with Calvin Ridley on 40, 50-yard passes basically every time we turn the video on. And I'm not saying to overreact to the preseason, but if we're talking about quarterback upgrades and we talk about last year, Terry McLaurin with Jaden Daniels, Cortland Sutton with Bo Nix, why doesn't Calvin Ridley fall into that exact same conversation of Calvin Ridley with Cam Ward, massive upgrade? I have him as wide receiver 22, and I'm getting a ton of Calvin Ridley, and I'm going to walk all the way to the bank with it.
Got me by 1, you freaking SOB, Jake. Now I have to go adjust the ranks. So touche there. Best price I've seen on him is the wide receiver 30, pick 79 overall over at Yahoo. I will say, Jake, the more I've been diving kind of into some of these home league ADPs, I really want to leave my first 4 rounds, ideally with 2 running backs, because just the mid-range wide receiver value, man, is out of this world. Like over on Yahoo, wide receiver 26 to 31, Xavier Worthy, George Pickens, Jameson Williams, Jalen Waddle, Calvin Ridley, and then Tedoroa McMillan, man. Like, I want all those guys. Cue the auction bros saying, well, if you play auction, you can get them. They're right. Auctions are awesome. But man, Jake, again, like, I hope I can get Ridley out of that group. I'm fine with that. T-Mac's pretty good too. Like, have you noticed this though? Like that rounds 5 through 8 or even 9, man, in home leagues. Absolutely love the wide receivers there.
I'm with you. And I get a lot of people that are kind of going the other way. I was like, well, if blank running back is here in round 5, do you take him or whatever? I'm like, I'm not even getting most of those running backs because I'm with you. I'm actually coming back and getting wide receivers in this range because you get, I don't want to call it hero wide receiver because people love the hero RB and it's, the playoff zero RB. But to a point being, there's been drafts where I started with a wide receiver in the first round, like a Jefferson or a Lamb, come back with a running back and then hit running back again. Maybe even I consider Kittle in the 4th round. But because of what you just said, the 4th, 5th, 6th round, if I can get 2 from Jameson Williams, McMillan, Calvin Ridley, as my 2 and 3, yeah, I'm going to do that all day long. And the big part about it too is you can kind of pick your poison there. If you want a double upside, you can go that route with like a Jameson Williams, or you could go with the volume of the Ridley and McMillan, or you could do 1-and-1, which I've done a lot. I've got a lot of Jameson Williams and Calvin Ridley as my 2-3s. And I think those are basically league winners as your 2 and 3s, in my opinion.
Again, guys, Jake Ciely's 3 favorite players to draft so far: Justin Fields, Trayvon Henderson, and Calvin Ridley. I must say I cannot really disagree with any of those. Good job by you, my friend. More coming up there here on the Fantasy Life Show. First, a quick word to our friends over at Premier National Sports. Hey guys, if you're someone you know happens to know the next Calvin Ridley or Trayvon Henderson, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's just a random kid down the street, the fine folks at Premier National Sports is the team to help you through the entire recruiting and NIL process. And that's the thing these days, all right? Not only are you trying to figure out where you want to spend your next 3 or 4 years in college and if you actually want to be wearing a cool uniform or not, you can go make some freaking money there now, which again is one of the awesome parts of Premier National Sports. Help rising high school athletes take their game to the next level with personalized recruiting strategies and NIL education. Check them out. If you haven't yet, you can get in touch with their team at premiernationalsports.com. All right, Jake, time for a fun segment. We're getting a little creepy in here. Time for the cloaked identities of the week. I'm going to be describing a player. We're going to do 3 of them total with some clues for you, and I want you to try to guess. So I have 4 clues each. I'm going to throw it to you after each one to see if we can get there. The sooner, the better. Sounds like a game that you might have over at the New York Times and The Athletic. Always enjoy those. So starting off with a player, Jake. He grew up in Philadelphia. He was a 5-star in the RB4 in his high school class per 224/7 Sports behind Najee Harris, Cam Akers, and Stephen Carr. You have nothing to say.
I'll just throw a random name out. Jonathan Taylor.
Incorrect. This is a 26-year-old running back, and he is on his 3rd team already in the NFL.
3rd team. 26 years. Not Derek. No, 3rd team. No, I got DeAndre Swift.
Hey, only needed 2. There you go. DeAndre Swift also has not finished worse than the RB24 in PPR points per game since entering the league in 2020. The last clue, which was going to be the easy one, is that he shares a last name with an icon who just helped engineer one of the biggest podcast moments maybe ever. So I did want to bring up DeAndre Swift, though, Jake, because it's one of these things where Roschon Johnson has been a mix of hurt and just not getting any sort of camp hype. Maybe he's not even that good of a running back. We've reached the point where Kyle Monangai, rushes against 3rd and 4th stringers in the preseason, is getting a ton of love. I understand that DeAndre Swift, the vision, his ability to run between the tackles, he's not someone that I would rank anywhere near the top 10 real-life running backs. But, Jake, just in terms of DeAndre Swift being a proven explosive pass catcher with his biggest competition at this point being a rookie 7th rounder out of Rutgers, can we buy into DeAndre Swift already?
I'm buying into DeAndre Swift, but he's in, the RB2 conversation, which I think is fine. Like, we don't have this. It's not mutually exclusive to say, like, DeAndre Swift's been disappointing for what we think he could have done in the NFL, but at the same time, be a decent running back in fantasy. You bring it up, what this team did in this offseason. It was similar to the Bengals. We sat here scared, like, oh my gosh, they're going to draft somebody. Oh my gosh, they're going to add somebody in free agency. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And both these running backs basically came out unscathed. 3rd day draft picks. And then we're like, I don't want Swift, but we're excited about Chase Brown a little bit more. And I guess the offense helps, of course, being on the Bengals versus the Bears. But why are we so scared of DeAndre Swift? I think it's the perception of he's never done what we hoped he could do. He's an RB2 and he's fine to be an RB2. Maybe you want to really go down. You bring up the Rutgers thing. I've seen people go down the rabbit hole in this one super far with, Eric Bieniemy now is with this team, which, by the way, drafted Pacheco from Rutgers. And maybe that's a little secret insight. So you're shaking your head like, Monangai, cool. It can fall into the David Montgomery role, but he's going to be a timeshare piece. I don't think he's going to take over this backfield and take it away from DeAndre Swift.
100% in lockstep. I know we were talking before, and I still do love all those wide receiver values in the middle rounds. Okay, I'm taking a lot of those guys we talked about over DeAndre Swift in a vacuum. But you guys know how these starts goes. If you're picking out 101 and you already have Jamar Chase and you end up double tapping like Drake London and Lab McConkey in round 2 and 3, that is an instance where you should be dipping your toes into those RB2 waters. DeAndre Swift at cost, guys, really is someone that, again, I would look for more of those 0 RB builds, if you will. So good job by you, Jake. Got that one, 2 clues. Round 2 now, okay? This player went to the same college as probably the most popular sports podcaster ever. He currently resides over at The
Ringer. I'm definitely going to need another clue on that one.
That's fine. Last year, he was the wide receiver 61 in PPR points per game, only 0.1 fewer than Rome Odunze.
Somebody got hurt. Jalen Waddle?
No. One of only 10 wide receivers to average at least 10 yards per target last year with a minimum of 45 targets.
Your boy, Ricky Pearsall?
Nope. Last one. His fans have a very deep array of Scarface-themed memes anytime he does anything.
Oh, Jalen Coker.
Jalen Coker, come on down. The Holy Cross alum. Shout out to the great Bill Simmons. Had himself, again, a very efficient rookie season. Just obviously only one football to go around. Adam Thielen, Xavier Leggett, those guys in the passing game. That wasn't exactly looking incredible. That said, Jake, it was looking much better during the second half of last season. Yes, we have T-Mac there, but, Dwayne and I were, again, doing our RT Sports Draft last night, and we got to Xavier Leggett late in the draft, and we didn't pull the trigger because both of us were kind of thinking like there is a chance that Jalen Coker just straight up yanks away one of these starting jobs before week one. Are you with us, man? Are you a cokehead, Jake?
I'm not a cokehead in various terms there. But it's not so much that I have an issue with Coker. It's just the fact that I think Lee gets a fine talent in his own right. And then we still have Adam Thielen hanging around, not going away yet. I see the reports, and I do believe that we might finally be at the end. But there's been a connection with Bryce Young and Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen's still back for one more season. It's more of a fact of I like Coker in Dynasty as a nice buy low right now, but I could see him more of 2026. And I think that it comes down to also the backfield options. Jatavian Sanders, deep tight end flyer there. Like, I just think there's so many options for Bryce Young that McMillan's the only answer that I'm really going for with the Panthers. And I'm kind of thinking of once more clears out. The question that I see underlaying our talk here is that waiver wire option, a waiver wire winner. I think that might be the real answer. Like that, if Adam Thielen gets hurt early, Leggett stumbles out of the gate, or vice versa, one of them gets hurt. My point there is that's the thing. I need some clearing up of the options before I really buy into Coker.
Again, very fun player. I'm rooting for the guy just because, again, I love all the memes going on with it. Is he someone I'm exactly trying to leave every draft with at this point? Not quite. Last one, Jake, you're doing a good job. This man led the Big 12 in yards per reception at 22 and also 20.1 during his sophomore and junior seasons.
Big 12's Matthew Golden.
No, sir. He is a two-time All-Pro despite only being two-time All-Pro despite only being 23 years old.
I'm gonna need another one. I got wait. I was gonna say Jackson Smith and Jigba, but he's Ohio State, so I don't know. Here, go next one.
Last one. He did not play at least 50% of his offensive snaps last season until his team's eventual wild card loss.
Xavier Worthy.
No, Marvin Mims. 2 for 3. You got it.
Dang it.
Two-time All-Pro out of Oklahoma. Obviously was a coveted recruit over there. And yeah, guys, he has been one heck of a returner, but we could not get that full-time role with the Broncos last year. He was being used more as a gadget, a lot of screens, made some big plays downfield. I mean, that Bengals game, a pair of just absolutely awesome touchdowns there, but we just didn't have quite enough, again, routes to consistently feel good about him. Maybe that is changing though, Jake, because again, one of the more underrated, I thought, takeaways from that first team usage stuff from the preseason was the fact that Marvin Mims was only behind Cortland Sutton in terms of that first team route rate. He was actually north of 80%. So are you buying that, Jake, or is this maybe something where, again, looking a little bit too much into what was a 2 or 3 drive sample?
No, I'm buying into it to a degree. Pat Bryant, I thought was interesting, the rookie that they drafted, because he's got some similarities to Colston and Michael Thomas. And I'm not saying he's on their level by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just talking about that big slot role that Sean Payton likes in his offense. So I was thinking, maybe we get surprised by Pat Bryant. You've seen the talk of the other wide receivers of Troy Franklin with the connection from Bo Nix to college, and just nobody's really stepping up. And that's the big thing. We saw the Vele news early this preseason, go back to 2 months ago, and that's kind of fallen off. And as you bring it up, we're looking for who's the two. Unlike the Panthers, there was a clear option in the first game. Again, it is one game. We want to see a little bit more, but it's at least enough to say, hey, maybe Marvin Mims is finally going to be the two. I will say why I say buying into it somewhat is I still don't want people to overreact and go too crazy. I will finish my explanation before everybody overreacts. But I called Marvin Mims a possession wide receiver last year, and everybody's like, you're insane. Possession wide receiver. Look at the big playability. Possession wide receiver doesn't mean you don't have big playability. It just means you don't offer a ton after the catch, because a lot of your catches just end where you are. And I still think that is part of Marvin Mims' game. And to bring up Xavier Worthy, who I threw into my guest earlier, like Xavier Worthy does a ton after the catch with also some big plays. I think Marvin Mims is going to have a nice ADOT, is going to make plays downfield, but I just don't see him doing a ton after the catch, but that can fit in this offense. So I will say Marvin Mims, I'm willing to gamble on a wide receiver 4 pick at this point as the upside. I think his ceiling still might be a wide receiver 3, where you get the volume of less than you want for consistency with that kind of late career Deshaun Jackson. You're going to get probably like 6 great games, a handful of really good ones, and then there's going to be weeks where you're like, oh man, he only got me 5 points. And I say that to say this: if you do draft Marvin Mims, he is clearly the number 2. You're just going to have to keep him in your lineup every single week instead of trying to guess what weeks he hits.
And that's why I do think this evolving role is so big, because they were trying to make him that yak guy a little bit last year. It was gadgetly, a lot of screens. They actually had him lined up at running back a good amount. But when you add Evan Ingram, who's a low ADOT guy in his own right, and you add RJ Harvey, who's getting some of that Joker hype, I wasn't too high on Mims, so I didn't see him getting those same usage. Man, the heavy percentage of his routes, again, in that first team preseason just snap stuff was going on out wide. Could again be someone that they're using more so downfield. Really do like that late career Djax comp. So no, don't go out of your way to get the guy. But hey, for me, like there is kind of a wide receiver cliff around wide receiver 55, 56. We got Keon Coleman, Michael Pittman's of the world, Rashid Shaheed. Actually a pretty good comp there for what Mims could be working with. I do think he deserves to be in that tier. And then after that, just go ahead and start moving on to your late round QBs and tight ends and some handcuffs running backs as well. So good job by you, Jake. Again, this has been your Cloaked Identities of the Week presented by Cloaked. Just like we got you covered for your fantasy drafts, Cloaked has got you covered when protecting your identity online. Your friends may be trying to snipe you in drafts, but a lot of people are out there on the internet trying to snipe your sensitive information online. That is why one of my favorite features of Cloaked is the ability to create unlimited unique aliases online. So now you can sign up anywhere, shop anywhere, or do anything online without having to use your real emails, phone numbers, or passwords. Get started with Cloaked's free risk scan at cloaked.com/fantasy, courtesy of Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, to see where your personal information is exposed, and then sign up with 20% off with code FANTASY. Guys, it's round 11. Your RB sleeper is still on the board, but your cooler, it's empty, completely empty, devastatingly empty. What a freaking terrible development. But hey, this gives you 2 choices. Leave and miss the pick of the season, or go hit up our fine friends over at Gopuff, because in as fast as 15 minutes, your beer and snacks are out your door and you're ready to go for the last few rounds of your draft. And hey, even better, you can get 60% off your first order with code FANTASYLIFE60 only at Gopuff. All right, Jake, you mentioned your favorite players to draft and everything, but I wanted to kind of lean into this idea of, hey, we're on the clock, it's our home league, and we just got to make some tough decisions, okay? We have guys ranking certain places, but when it's between 2 of them, maybe those sort of things can change. So kicking things off, you're on the clock, you want to win more than anything because you want to put your stupid freaking friends in their place here in the group me, right? Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason?
Aaron Jones. I know the Jordan Mason love, and I'm part of that. And I've seen Jordan Mason, what he's done. And of course, hey, Shanahan makes good running backs great. So does Kevin O'Connell. Like, I'm not concerned about that. Yep. It just comes down to, even if I thought this was a 50-50 split straight up, where there is potential for that to be, I still believe Aaron Jones would be the pass catcher. And that's why I would take Aaron Jones over Jordan Mason. There'd be the slight difference there. But I will say this, it does depend on ADP, because if Aaron Jones is hanging around DeAndre Swift, I'm taking Swift and then just waiting on Mason. But straight up between the 2, I would take Aaron Jones.
And I just did kind of want to get that point home, because I've been hyping up Jordan Mason a lot, and I will continue to do so, because again, some of these sites, guys, he's being priced next to legit handcuff running backs. And as Jake is talking about, like, it is going to be a committee of some shape or size. That said, Fantasy Life consensus does have Jones RB28, Mason RB29. I personally have him RB27, 28. I will say though, Jake, the godfather of guillotine leagues, which by the way, check out if you guys haven't already, Paul Charchian over here at Fantasy Life, resident Vikings fan as well. He has Aaron Jones RB40 and Jordan Jordan Mason RB24. There is a contingent of Vikings fans that actually think Mason could take this backfield over. I'm skeptical just because I think what Aaron Jones can do as a receiver is going to prevent anything like that happening.
Right.
But I guess the other point to consider would be that this does have, kind of a middle-class man's Lions backfield vibe where I do think if anything happens to Mason or Jones, the other guy is going to be knocking on that RB1 door in a hurry.
That's the biggest thing here too. And that's why we like Jordan Mason. I say us in the industry is because that if Aaron Jones gets hurt 2 weeks in, and then Jordan Mason will be in the top 15, even like you said, potentially RB1 conversation. Conversely, if Jordan Mason gets hurt and he's been hurt in the past, then it's back to Aaron Jones. The biggest thing, and I think the Vikings contingent is because of what happened last year, is that no running back could get into the end zone running the ball for them last year. And the thing is this as much as anybody. I do believe Jordan Mason is better than what we've seen, but he struggled with the 49ers to get in the end zone in the short yardage too. Now, granted, it was a very small sample, and some of those plays might have been telegraphed because of the rotation that they had at running back at the time or whatever it might be. So I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying, I don't know if all of a sudden it's going to be Jordan Mason running for 10 touchdowns and Aaron Jones still only gets 1 or 2.
It is one of those things. You're like, oh, the goal line roll. How's that guy done with the goal line roll in the past? Whatever. We're playing fantasy for 2025. Doesn't fit my agenda, but good point as always, Jake. Let's go to another backfield, a pair of teammates here who are priced pretty similarly throughout the industry. Caleb Johnson or Jaylen Warren. We'll say it's full PPR to make things a little more interesting.
Oh, see, you threw that on top of it too. I will still take Caleb Johnson, although you saw the report yesterday. We might be completely wrong on Caleb Johnson. I still believe where they drafted and what Caleb brings. The biggest answer here is I think he's Najee Harris in the Najee Harris role, and not a 1-for-1, but very similar. And I go to what the team has told us. I bring this up a lot, and I'm sure you echo this sentiment, but pay attention to what the teams tell us, not just by usage, but what they tell us throughout their history. Jaylen Warren's had multiple opportunities over his career at this point to take the job, to be the guy. Even when Najee Harris misses a little bit of time, they just don't lean on him. Like Zach Charbonnet took over when Kenneth Walker was out. Jaylen Warren still shared a lot. And I just go to the Steelers have, in my opinion, they've told us, we like Jaylen Warren, who he is, the role he's in, and that's going to be a timeshare piece. The Najee Harris role now goes to Caleb Johnson. And even in full PPR, I will just take that because in the history of the Steelers, that's 55, 60% of the touches and the touchdown equity. I like Warren a lot, but here's the good news. You can get both of them too at decent prices.
It really is a situation where I was running some of these again, kind of just fantasy life rankings versus home site ADP. And both of these running backs were popping up as good values because they're going round 7, round 9. Where there is uncertainty in fantasy, guys, we can often find value. And I will say some of this is, I know Arthur Smith, PTASD, we'll try to figure out that acronym later. But we have this idea in our head, again, that Arthur Smith is just, going to be ruining all these backfields. Look, I would love Bijan Robinson. He's good enough to get 400 touches a year. I'm not saying that he was used perfectly, but we act like the dude barely was touching the football. Bijan 2 years ago, guys, still had 300 combined carries and targets. Last year, Najee Harris, yes, Jaylen Warren was banged up there for a little bit and missed a couple games, but Najee Harris had 311 combined carries and targets. So yes, we were drafting Bijan much higher than what we're drafting Caleb, and Najee Harris even, I believe, was going probably a few spots higher. But man, Jake, if we get 300 combined carries and targets for Caleb Johnson this year, he's going to smash ADP.
By far, if he gets 260, he's going to smash his ADP right now. So, and I think the bigger thing to go back to is you can almost just pick your poison here. If you don't believe us and you do like the pass catcher, similar to the Aaron Jones argument, and Warren is going cheaper, neither of their cost is prohibitive. Actually, neither of their cost is respectful of what they can do, even if our role, even with what we're calling going to happen, even if it's a 60-40 split, they're actually both discounts right now.
Jake, tougher one here based on the news we got yesterday. What about Browns, seemingly RB1 now, Quinshon Judkins versus Giants, potential RB1 Tyrone Tracy?
So if you would have asked me this 3 weeks ago, and we knew Judkins was playing, I was just like to preface with that, because obviously 3 weeks ago, this was an easy answer. Nobody's taking Judkins. I was going to say, if you asked me this 3 weeks ago, I probably would have said Judkins, but that was before Cam Scadaboo has been dealing with this injury. And I'm going to say Tracy for that reason. I believed that this was going to be a split backfield, actually not too dissimilar from the Steelers, is that this could have been a 55-45 split. But that being said, a little bit different in the facet that I do think Scadaboo would have been better between the tackles. and also underrated pass catcher. And that Tracy was a surprise to a lot of people who didn't know about Tracy, whether you were a Giants fan or a fantasy player. And sometimes surprise players can kind of skew people's opinion of them the following season. Like, oh, Ladd McConkey and Tyron Tracy came out of nowhere. And they didn't really come out of nowhere for a lot of people that were in the know. And I'm not, again, talking down to people. I'm just saying that it was a surprise. So people are like super excited about like, oh, I found this guy that wasn't rated high enough. I do think Tracy would share with Scadaboo if healthy, but now you have a lot of missed time for a rookie similar to Judkins, and that's why I'm going with Tracy. Judkins hasn't been with the team. Judkins hasn't even been practicing with the team on a team that big questions about their offense, and then is still going to share the ball with Dylan Sampson. Jerome Ford's still probably going to get some of the work, and then how good is the offense going to be? I'll take Tracy. At least he's got one fewer question.
And again, I'm okay taking Judkins over Mixon, Etienne, Dobbins, Javonte, and kind of that tier of guys. But we're not completely out of the woods yet, guys. Suspension is still possible. And to Jake's point, it's not like we're dealing with the most fantasy-friendly offense in the first place once we are even there. Two more, Jake. We can go rapid fire, if you will, on this. But Calvin Ridley, someone who we talked up earlier, versus your favorite fantasy analyst, seemingly favorite mid-round wide receiver, Mr. Travis Hunter.
Oh, Calvin Ridley by a smash. The super smash. You said rapid fire. I got him rounds in front of Travis Hunter. So probably 2 rounds about.
Rounds. You heard it here. What about Jameson Williams versus George Pickens? This one's definitely closer.
It is, but if I'm going to take the number 2s, I'm going to take the number 2 who actually just finished top 20 versus let's see what George Pickens can do with Dak Prescott. I love some JMO, and I'm going to keep him inside my top 20 and keep drafting him before I consider George Pickens.
I am sadly a Cowboys fan, everyone, and was kind of talking to the guys in the group me and just basically saying, like, I don't feel good about this season from a win-loss perspective. I just kind of had the thought and was like, how is George Pickens going to deal with being on a disappointing team that maybe things aren't going as well as they want them to? Scary thought. Good thing all the wide receivers that have left Pittsburgh over the years, Jake, have just gone on to do fantastic things, right? Well, at least I have that going for me. Shout out to Emmanuel Sanders. He has bucked that trend, but yeah, certainly not great. Guys, time for some bold calls here on the fourth quarter of the Fantasy Life Show. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Renegade Fantasy. Fantasy football players, aren't you done watching your season crumble because of injuries or underperforming players? Well, then welcome to Renegade Fantasy Football, the only app that lets you substitute players in real time. No more losing Sundays, no more complaining in the group me, no more lost points, no more could have won if. With Renegade, you're not just a GM, you are the coach. Call the shots, make the moves, win your league, step out of that luxury box and onto the field. This is fantasy football without limits. This is Renegade Fantasy. You can join the Fantasy Life League today at fantasylife.renegadefantasy.com. Time for Mic'd Up, presented by the fine folks over at Mike's Hard Lemonade. This season, we are turning up the heat, handing over the mic, and brought to you by Mike's Hard Lemonade. It is time to go hard for your league with our new weekly segment, Mic'd Up. Jake, I'm handing you the mic. What is your first bold call for the 2025 season?
Yeah, that Matthew Golden leads the Packers as their wide receivers. And hey, this is crazy to think about. The first 1,000-yard wide receiver since Devontae Adams. Matthew Golden, I think, immediately steps in as the one. I know there's a lot of questions for this team in the past that you know this. We've been frustrated in fantasy. All these wide receivers getting 65% of the routes run and everybody mixing and matching. And that's part of the credit to what they have, but it's also part of the credit being kind of a bad thing is that they have a bunch of 2s. They don't have a true 1. And I'm not certain that Golden is a clear NFL 1, but I think he is the 1 on this team. I know that Dobbs is a deep threat talent. He's had some consistency concerns again already in camp, and now everybody seemingly is banged up on the Packers except for Matthew Golden, which even opens the door for him even more. If Jordan Love is going to bounce back to what we saw from 2 years ago, remember, for everybody out there, Jordan Love was hurt almost immediately last year and played through the season with 2 injuries at one point. I think that Jordan Love bounces back and targets Golden consistently every single game as the 1, and we don't have to worry about him sharing those duties where, again, 1,000 yards, I could see him putting up 11, 1,200 yards, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, and being the answer we hope Christian Watson could be for this team.
Yeah. I moved him up all the way to wide receiver 32, man, right there behind Travis Hunter. Again, several very good first-round wide receivers. We got Tedderell McMillan, obviously, and Emeka Egbuka as well. With that said, Jake, your second bold call actually involves a non-first-round receiver finishing up there with him.
Yes, actually, my bold call for this one is Jaden Higgins being the second best rookie wide receiver in all of fantasy this year. And it's just about the role. He's stepping into the number 2 role that we've seen from Tank Dell in the past. But the reason I like him more than if Tank Dell was even healthy for this year is because the one thing I keep going back to, as bad as things were for CJ Stroud last year and all the pressure he was under, the one thing he was still top of the leagues in is targeting Nico Collins when under pressure. Nico Collins was one of the most productive wide receivers in yards per route run and a lot of other metrics when CJ Stroud was under pressure. And CJ Stroud was also still a top 10 passer when targeting Nico under pressure. Well, a lot of people, including Dane Brugler over at The Athletic, compare Jaden Higgins to Nico Collins. That's lofty. I'm not going to go that far, but even if he's just Marvin Jones, which is my comparison to him, and he can step in as the 2, which he already is, similar to Golden, his role is already secure. Higgins is already the 2. Then you have that for CJ Stroud. I don't need the offensive line to be great. I just need CJ Stroud to go back to throwing for 4,000 yards and mid-20 touchdowns. And I think Higgins will put up 1,200 yards and potentially even more touchdowns in that offense than Matthew Golden can.
Love the Marvin Jones comp. You know, Jake is a real football guy, and we aren't just, always resting on comps from guys within the three or last 4 years. The man knows ball. And again, make sure you guys follow him at All In Kid Podcast, All In Speed Run. Thank you so much, Jake. This has been a wrap on this week's edition of Mic'd Up, brought to you by Mike's Hard Lemonade. Bold flavor for bold takes. And that's going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Thank you guys, as always. If you like the episode, then like the episode. Feel free to subscribe as well. So for Jake, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, take care, everybody.